Exactly.
What day is today? The what?
The 25th.
August 25th Board of Education meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge. Sorry, it was a long day. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Present.
Mrs. Gulick?
Present.
Mrs. Halloran?
Present.
Mr. Nicholas?
Present.
Mrs. Petro?
Present.
Any retirement or spotlight on that?
Nope.
Nothing. Okay. Any information to the board?
If I could ask Erin Gadd to give an update on our new website, and I'll ramble on for a couple seconds while she gets set up. As many of you know, we had some website issues at the end of last year, and the company we were working with refused to address them. So we switched over mid-year, I'm sorry, actually about June, wasn't it?
It was July 1st.
Yeah, July 1st.
Yeah.
And Erin's worked very, very hard. Erin, DIS, and that old crew, and Dan Rakovich back there in the corner. Very hard to get one that's new and improved. And it kicked off, was it today?
Today.
All right, well,
Today
give
was
us an update.
the big rollover.
What's so special about this website, Erin?
It's special because it's gorgeous, first of all.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, and I want to do a big shout out to PAC TV. They did the photography for the new site, and he's going to be all humble and quiet about it, but I mean, it's really stunning. The photos that they were able to capture of our students and our teachers working together really reflect the excellence that happens within our schools, and I think that's the real standout piece here. There are some other design elements that makes it more functional for everybody, which was the real reason that we moved over. One of which is that it's a responsive design template. So if you're looking at it on your computer, the interface is like this. If you're looking at it on your iPad, it shifts everything so everything is still accessible, the items that you need the most. And if you're looking at it on your iPhone, it responds to that size as well, which is really nice since last year we saw a 40% increase in individuals reaching our website through smart devices. We also finally have a search function, which is very exciting for all of us. And
that was the big thing they wouldn't do for us, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
One of many things.
Yeah, one of many. And also a searchable staff directory. We received a lot of phone calls, especially from folks who substitute teach in our district, who wanted to very easily be able to locate somebody, know what building that they're in, know what position they're in. So, I mean, obviously, rather obvious reasons. Better exposure for our community business schools partners. In the past, we charged people to put their logos on our site, and they didn't even do anything for our kids. So we did away with that whole system, and now all of our CBS partners, they have great real estate on there so that we can honor them for free for all that they do for our schools. We also have friendly URLs. So in the past, our URLs were this long and they made no sense and you could never remember them, and it was very difficult to share what your web page was. Now everything is very streamlined. So for instance, the school board is parmacyschools.org/BOE. Superintendents is parmacyschools.org/superintendent, etc. I'm really making that process easier. You parents can also right now register for information alerts so that if there's an update to the calendar at their school or there's a new news item or announcement, they're automatically notified. There are also pass keys so that they can log in only once to areas like My School Bucks. If you're like me, you always forget that username and password, your kid has no money in their account, you're like, what do I do? This time you only have to sign in once and the website will automatically take you into that account. And other things like VersaTrans and some of the curricular items. There are more advanced About Us and Contact Us places, and things that are still yet to come in Phase 2 are a mobile phone app for all of our smartphones that's coming in September, a better parent portal to help keep everyone's schedules better organized and better in tune to what's happening in their child's classroom, and social media integration so that you can see what's happening all throughout the cities that we serve. And teacher pages, we'll begin instruction on those tomorrow. So really big project. It was a team effort all around. We had professional development in there, DIS, PAC TV. Really, really proud of what we were able to produce. So, yay, it's the first day of school. Any questions?
I'm looking at the site right now. It looks great.
That's pretty fancy.
It's flowing and flows well. I even tried the search feature as you were speaking.
Did you find yourself?
I looked for a public...
President Nicholas found himself.
Right, no, I did not. No, I did not look for him. I got scared to go through the profiles, actually.
I also want to share with you some of the pieces that we've developed, brag pieces about our district to really showcase the great things that are happening in our schools, and also with our technology initiatives. So these are for you.
Cool. Looks great.
Any
Erin,
questions?
Looks great.
If I could, while Erin's still standing there, to embarrass her more than watching her walk away and be embarrassed. A couple years now you've been working here?
This is my third year.
Yeah. There was a communications audit that was done in our district. And as a result, we knew what our community wanted in terms of communication from us. We hired Erin and said, here's what you need to do. We kind of backed away and let her do all that, but since then she's grown things. We started out being reactive based on what the community wants, and very, very quickly I did become proactive. Talked about a 40% increase in terms of hits on the website from devices. Talk about, again, the superintendent's message that goes out on Monday mornings that she gets out to everybody. I think originally we had 285 people. We're now over 10,000. Again, we're not only meeting what the expectations were, but predicting appropriately the expectations coming down the road. And Erin, you're always several steps ahead. The work you do is phenomenal, and I agree you've got great folks working with you, and PAC TV and Dan Rakovich in particular, Linda Sepik.
Yep.
But again, what you've done is absolutely amazing. And what I hear, when I first got here, what I heard more than anything is how horrible our communication was with the community. And what I hear now is one of our greatest attributes is how well we communicate with the community. So thanks. I appreciate your leadership, and you've really done wonderful things.
We have a good team. Thank you.
Thanks.
That's it. All right. Communications. Mrs. Gulick.
Are there any board members that wish to communicate anything this evening? Okay. Yeah, we won't be doing the assets today. We'll pick that up again at the next board meeting. All right. Mr. Bowman, do you have anything to communicate with us?
Nothing this evening.
Thank you. PTA Council report?
Yep.
This one okay? Where'd you put that one?
Whatever you choose. Sure.
Hi, I'm Dana Paul from Parma Council PTAs. I brought my boys, Tom and Zach. Sorry.
Hey, guys.
How you doing?
I know. Parma Council PTAs, we had our first meeting last week, August 20th. We're very excited to begin this school year. Our theme this year is Going to Bat for Children. The BAT stands for By Advocating for Children and Training Our Members. And obviously we have baseball theme this year. Speaking of advocating and training, a few of us council officers were able to attend our National PTA Convention, which took place in Austin, Texas. We went in June. Also, there were many of us from council as well as the units that attended Ohio PTA's summer leadership training. And we were able to bring back a lot of valuable information from workshops to help our units to function optimally. Our PTA units are currently selling PTA memberships. Please consider joining one of our many PTAs. Memberships are sold for either $5 or $6, depending on the unit. And we're hoping to increase our membership as we hope to every year in all of our schools. We're also currently selling calendars. We do this every year as well. Our calendars contain student artwork, and they also have important dates for all of our PTA units. Please consider buying a calendar. They cost $5, and it obviously supports Parma Council PTAs. Our next Council PTA meeting is Wednesday, September 10th. It's at 7 p.m. at Parma Senior High in the cafeteria. And I hope you all have a great school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. We appreciate the updates from the PTA. It's very important that you keep us informed. Okay, Dr. Graham, strategic plan update.
Strategic planning update. The strategic planning action teams continue to meet with committees developing plans to present at the next management team meeting. Many groups are already implementing some of their action plans, such as Building Pride Committee, which is hosting the alumni tailgate parties at the first home football game of each high school. This effort is being led by committee members Nancy Fedak and Colleen Moran. The next management team meeting is scheduled for October 7th at 6 o'clock at Parma Snow Auditorium. And what they're going to do is listen to all the feedback and get updates on exactly where people are, and they will make adjustments to that plan. Again, the management team has the authority to tweak those things as things unravel. And the final planning step will be presented at strategic plan in an open community forum through a State of the Schools address, which will be held sometime in November. That's where we'll unveil the plan.
Wonderful. Thank you. And do you have any questions for Dr. Graham on the strategic plan? Okay, that concludes communications.
Thank you. I move to adopt Resolution 2014-8308, motion to adopt the August 25th, 2014 regular meeting agenda for consideration, discussion, and/or action.
Second?
Okay, we have several amendments and walk-ons. Move to adopt Resolution 2014-8309, adoption of amendments and walk-on items.
Second?
A motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8309. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Resolution 2014-8309 has been approved. Ms. Barkowski, do we have anyone that wants to speak prior to
No, we don't.
board resolutions? Okay. We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8308 to adopt the August 25th agenda. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Resolution 2014-8308 has been approved as amended. Move to adopt Resolution 2014-8310, approval of the written record of proceedings from the August 14th regular and August 18th, 20th, and 21st of 2014 Special Board of Education meetings.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8310. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Resolution 2014-8310 has been approved. Ms. Barkowski, was that too fast?
No, you're good.
I was good. I got yelled at the last board meetings. I was speaking a little too quickly, so I apologize if you gotta slow it down. Because when it gets quiet, I always know I'm in trouble. So I was in trouble, so now I gotta slow it down. So, teaching and learning.
Thank you. I move the adoption of Resolution 2014-08-311, granting authority to the administration to enter into a contract with Invo Healthcare Associates Incorporated for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second?
There is a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8311. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8311 has been approved.
I move the adoption of Resolution 2014-08-312, granting authority to the administration to enter into a contract with Step Center for Excellence in Autism for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8312. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8312 has been approved.
And if there are no other topics to be brought forward, that concludes teaching and learning.
Thank you. Business.
Thank you. I move the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-313, approving change order for Normandy High School cosmetology renovation.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-313. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-313 has been approved.
I move the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-314, approving change order for Normandy High School culinary arts renovation.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-314. Any questions or comments from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-314 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-315, approving change order for Byersfield and Parma Senior High School site improvements.
Second?
There is a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-315. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-315 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-316, approving memorandum of understanding between the City of Parma and the Parma City School District and between the Parma Municipal Court and the Parma City School District.
Second?
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-316. Any questions from the board? Seeing none, roll call.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-316 has been approved.
And if there are no topics or items for discussion, that concludes business for this evening.
Thank you. Finance.
Thank you. I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-317, approval of supplemental appropriations.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-317. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran? Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8317 has been approved.
There are no topics or items for discussion. That concludes finance.
Okay, moving into Human Resources.
I have
Just
some.
kidding, I knew there was legislation, I'm kidding. I knew you, she was gonna, she pounced. She's
I
like,
know.
I got stuff.
Right, I do have stuff. Tomorrow and Wednesday, there will be hearings on House Bill 597. And this is the bill that eliminates or prohibits the use of Common Core state standards after the current school year. It eliminates or prohibits the use of Ohio standards for science and social studies that were adopted in 2010. It prohibits the use of park assessments. It puts in place the Massachusetts standards for mathematics, English, language arts, science, and social studies from pre-Common Core state standards for 2 years, the 15-16 school year and the 16-17 school year. The new standards in the 4 subject areas are to be developed by the State Board of Education for use beginning with 2017-18 school year. And this means that today's freshmen will face 3 different sets of standards for math, English, science, and social studies during their 4 years in high school. No kid should go through that. No kid. The bill also institutes a legislative steering committee to review any new proposed state standards. It replaces the recently passed 7 end-of-course exams with 5 end-of-course exams required before graduation, and it contains unprecedented specificity on what the standards for each subject area should include. I also have a fact sheet on the Common Core standards, if anyone is interested in looking at it. On this past Saturday, I was in Columbus for a meeting of the State Legislative Platform Committee. We had 19 amendments to the state platform that were presented to us. We adopted 6, we amended 6, we did not accept 4, and we did pass 15, which will become the business for the delegates at the Capitol Conference. And the last item that I have is that the Legislation Department of OSBA is going to be putting on some breakfasts. And the one for the Northeast, well, there's 2 for the Northeast region, but the one that we would be most interested in is on October 14th. It's at the Valley Inn Restaurant at the Cuyahoga County Career Center, and it will have representatives from the Senate District 13, 27, and 29, and Ohio House Districts 6, 9, 13, 16, 36, and 55. There will be a $10 charge at the door to help defray the cost of the breakfast. And we do have to put reservations in to Marcela Gonzalez from OSBA if you are planning on going. And I'm sure Pam would take those reservations and call them in for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Human Resources.
Thank you. I move the adoption resolution 2014-8-318, approval of the following certificated exhibits: confirmation of certificated replacements, confirmation of stipend amounts, confirmation of substitute teacher appointments, acceptance of certificated resignations, confirmation of supplemental appointments.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt resolution 2014-8318. Any questions or comments from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nichols?
Yes, resolution 2014-8318 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-318.1, approval of the following certificated exhibits: confirmation of supplemental contracts, confirmation of change, and certificated assignments for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-318.1. Any questions or comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-318.1 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-319, authorization to hire alternative education program coordinator for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-319. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-319 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-320, acceptance of certificated retirements.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-320. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-320 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-320.1, appointment of grant-funded certificated administrative personnel.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-320.1. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-320.1 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-320.2, approval of the Pharmacy Schools Bus Duty appointment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-320.2. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-320.2 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-321, approval of the following classified exhibits: confirmation of classified appointments/replacements, confirmation of change of classified assignments, confirmation of classified resignations.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-321. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-321 has been approved.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-322, resolution authorizing compensation for district police officers for the 2014-2015 school year.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-322. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-322 has been approved.
If there are no topics or items for discussion, that concludes human resources.
Thank you. Policies.
I move for the adoption of Resolution 2014-8-323, approval of the following revised policy. Policy 5111, eligibility of resident/non-resident students.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8-323. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Gulick?
Yes.
Mrs. Petro?
Yes.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes, Resolution 2014-8-323 has been approved.
This is the first reading for Policy 5630.01, positive behavior intervention and supports and limited use of restraint and seclusion. It will be on the agenda for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any information requested by board members? Nope, we're good? Okay. All right, this time we're going to open the meeting to the public to address the board with their comments. Requests to be heard for us must be completed and submitted to the administrative secretary, Ms. Barkowski, in the back. Raise your hand, just so folks know they know who you are now. As per board policy, you will not be able to respond directly or address some issues at this time. Please know that various board policies exist which set forth processes and procedures to be used in investigating and addressing personnel issues and may be called into executive session. 3 minutes has been allotted per speaker. Please state your name and address for the record. And first one up is Pat, is it Pekarik? Is that correct?
Good evening. Carrie, 11661 Appleton, Parma Heights. There have finally been major changes in the issue of head injuries in athletes, whether it be from the professional level all the way down to our youngest. As the mother of a former Valley Forge football, basketball, baseball player, I'd like to know what the Parma City Schools policy is on head injuries and what training has been provided to those individuals who are going to be making those decisions.
That's a great question. Dr.
I
Graham,
can speak to some of that. I'm not sure anybody else can elaborate. I do believe we do concussion testing. We contract with now University Hospitals of Parma. It's always been Parma Community Hospital. There are trainers. They provide all the training and all the work for our coaches, and they're on site. Mrs. Johnson, anything else to add to that?
Well, there are state requirements. Every coach has to go through the pupil
good point.
Training, whether you're a school coach or a volunteer, you're on the field, and they can't even get their license or anything. So before we hire them or let them volunteer, there's an online test that they go through in training that they must complete, and it's not easy.
But that's a great question, and again, I'm seeing more and more of that on television. Schools have been doing this now for years because obviously children, actually concussion rules are very different than they are for adults. But yeah, everyone's trained, and we have medical professionals on site for our athletes, not just game time, but also practices. Thank you.
Well, I was looking down because I was trying to find the actual policy that spoke to that, but I couldn't find it quick enough, so.
The board actually voted on that revision of that policy, I think, within the last month. So it may or may not
be up there.
Through the OLA.
Makes sense.
So you have a hard copy, but it's not online, is what they're saying. It takes a little bit of time before the hard copy that's already approved, it is policy, before it gets posted on the website, can be searched.
Okay, Jeff Wensing.
Good evening, everybody. Jeff Wensing, Parma Education Association President, 6165 Pearl Road. I'd just like to thank the teachers and the students and the parents for such a smooth opening day. I know it's inevitable on the district, how large we are, that you have some glitches that might go along with such a big endeavor. I know at Parma High there was a little technology glitch with the Emily system that checks in the textbooks, and the teachers, bobbed and weaved, and they got their way through it, and Emily came back up, and we were able to continue. I would also like to thank the cleaners, the bus drivers, the cafeteria workers, the maintenance workers, the secretaries for all their efforts, and PA acknowledges the important role that they play in the educational process. At this time, I'd probably be neglectful in my duties as PA president if I didn't remind the community that the PA members have been working without a successor agreement as our last contract expired July 31st, 2013. I am proud of the PA membership as they continue to be amazing professionals and educate the students of Parma City Schools to the absolute best of their abilities despite the lack of a new agreement. PA wishes all students and educators a successful and safe 2014-15 school year. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could, very briefly, I'd echo Mr. Wensing's comments. Phenomenal start to the school year. Obviously, there were those types of glitches, and cafeteria had some issues that we've got in a situation for. Transportation, we always stumble at the beginning of the year just by the design of transportation. But again, phenomenal people doing great things, and it's pretty exciting. I was in a lot of buildings today, and there's a sense of calm this year that's kind of refreshing. I haven't seen for the past couple of years just because of all the changes that we've gone through. But again, I agree, Mr. Wensing, it was a very, very nice start to the school year because we have great people in our buildings.
Great to hear. Tammy Sebastian.
Well, I get to go up right after him and just go on and say that. Tammy Sebastian, 6814 Revere. I just wanted to actually go over and say what he just said. Probably this time last year, Dr. Graham, and the year before, I came up here probably with a laundry list of things that needed to be fixed or were not working. But I have to tell you today, I really wanted to come up here and talk about Greenbrier Middle School.
I hope
red carpet
it's spread.
yeah.
They had a red carpet for the kids out. They had cheerleaders cheering the kids into the building, and a stereo playing "Let's Get It Started." So every child was just so excited to come in to learn, and every parent probably went home feeling good that their kid was there. So I just wanted to say that.
Red carpet treatment.
I was there a little later in the day, and the excitement was still there. I mean, it was a very positive day.
That's cool.
A lot of times by 1 o'clock on the first day of school, kids are trying to stay awake. But
yeah, and then even with the glitches that happened, I did have a glitch at Valley Forge. My daughter had no math on her schedule at all, but by second period, I had the counselor calling me. Everything was fixed. She had a great day. So I just wanted to say that. Then I do have to say one thing about a policy. I had asked before about the seclusion and restraint policy. That
was changed.
And did we have parental input on that?
Well, I think the only suggestion you made that we agreed with anyway, and I think the board consented, is the fact that it was not politically correct in the stating of, I think we said, disabled students or something along those lines, as opposed to students with disabilities.
No. I'm talking about months ago when we were talking about the seclusion and restraint policy. I asked if we'd get parental input, and I believe there was a parent committee formed.
That's the policy that the board has as a first reading this week, actually.
Okay.
So that work was done last school year, and it has been kind of in the docket, waiting for the new system with Neola to get its place in line to come before the board.
Okay. So that's another policy. That's not this one. You're saying it is this one.
I don't know if we're communicating exactly correct.
I'm sorry.
Seclusion and restraint policy is an update because the board did adopt the original policy, but this is the one that contains some of the revisions with
the wording.
Correct.
Oh, so it was two of my issues that you were speaking of. Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, gotcha. You brought something up at the last board meeting about the verbiage.
Yes,
you were completely correct.
But we did, so just going back, we did have parental input on the original policy. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Forgive me, Mr. Ray, is it?
Dimitri.
I thought it was Dimitri. I thought that was a W at the end, though.
It is.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's still Dimitri.
Yeah. So we learned.
I'm not good with that, ever. I'm always butchering it, so I just apologize to everyone when I
butcher it. The Parma school teachers told us that W is a vowel, so.
Got it. You're good. You're good. It's all good, Dimitri. Yeah, got it. There's an I there.
Ray Dimitri, 7841 Valley Villas. Basically, I want to talk to the board about our transportation policy, and part of it expressed a little bit of my disappointment. I know we all want to have a high-performing school district. And one of the things I found out with my daughter this year, she's going to Greenbrier, which she enjoys going there. Joy's going on the bus. When we got the schedule, it's like, you had to be there at 6:40 in the morning. It's like, boy, that's awful early. What time are they dropping the girls off? Well, they drop them off about 50 minutes later. And then I know we've talked to a few of you, my wife has talked to a few, we moved that back about 10 minutes. But I'd like to ask the board to take a look at our transportation policy. Can we start reducing that time period the kids are on the bus? If you're asking the kid to take a test, and they're on the bus for 50 minutes on a good day, you get a bad, our test scores are going to suffer. Really want to take a look at what can we do to maybe compress that. They're only going about 2.5, 3 miles, and to take 50 minutes, I'm on the other side of the county, for me going to work. So I just want to take this time to express, again, I'd like to have you guys take an action to ideally review that policy a little bit closer and see if there's something we can do to abbreviate the amount of time the kids are on the bus.
Okay.
I can just address that again. That's a long conversation, but I can give a very brief response to that. And we just had a meeting before, and quite frankly, we have meetings at the beginning of every school year with those same concerns, and they are completely justified. Actually, our target time is not to go over 45 minutes. Can't promise that, but that's our target time to get students to school. At the beginning of every school year, we have to account for everyone who qualifies for transportation. And then after 2 weeks, we can take those students off. So we plan for worst case scenario, knowing full well that statistically speaking, historically speaking, for whatever reason, about 40% of the students never get on that bus. So we anticipate that time dropping considerably. 50 minutes, though, is not horrible, so I would assume that we'll be okay on that one. Some routes, quite frankly, are a lot longer, and I think what we need to do a better job of, we just had a meeting about an hour or so ago, I think is communicating that process. And that after 2 weeks, things change. Well, things change. If you have a student riding the bus, you know this. Things change constantly based on people moving in, moving out, and people just choosing to get another way to school or not. And we have to kind of flow with that.
Yeah.
But if the times are extreme, we'll do our best to get more drivers in and reduce those, but 45 minutes is the target number we don't want to exceed.
Well, and maybe that's something
Yeah.
that the board could look at, is like, do you want to maybe reduce it? Obviously, reducing the target, you have to add buses and people.
Sure, and
But
that's what it comes down
That might be
to.
something that we look at to say, is 45 minutes even a little bit too long? I was trying to remember how long it used to be when I was on a bus, but it's too long ago. I don't remember.
And I would say, having, and I think the board members would probably agree, having been on the board now for a number of years, the beginning usually is chaotic. A couple years ago when we had the consolidation, it was really chaotic. And then it did calm down. It does usually calm down just a little bit after. So also just ask everyone for a little bit of patience, because Dr. Graham's exactly right. It's like this in the beginning, but then it really does calm down.
Right.
Things usually work themselves out.
So maybe about 3 weeks, check back and see how
Yeah.
things
It
are
shouldn't take that long. It should take, I think what Marcia said is about 2 weeks from tomorrow, give or take.
Okay.
But it's not a Parma City school-specific issue. It's anybody who does transportation, because it's one of the few things we can't practice. We can do the routes and know the streets, but we don't know if the students are going to be there. I mean, so there's so many, they have to learn the students' names and faces when they get on the bus, so it's a little bit more complicated at the beginning, and it smooths out very, very quickly. So again, I agree with Mr. Nicholas. Appreciate your patience. In a couple weeks, we should have a much firmer grasp on it.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Ask something, because I actually had talked to Sue earlier, and one of the other concerns that she had is that her daughter's getting to Greenbrier about 20, 30 minutes before classes.
Well, now, they changed it, because when I called transportation, they said 7:30. And you're asking a child to sit there at 6:30 when it's dark out, and then they're gonna get her at Greenbrier at 7:30. I'm like, well, that's just ridiculous to wait a half hour before. And then I think she said it was around 20 till today.
Yeah, we do have to get our students there in time to eat breakfast. So
Well, she doesn't eat breakfast, so.
we understand, but we
I know, but everyone.
students, we have half of our district, I believe, qualifies for breakfast, and we have to have our students there to be eligible for breakfast, to be able to have it.
So is that most buildings then are getting there?
It's about 20 minutes before, Mary, is that right? Yeah.
Okay.
Actually, Marcia's back there, I guess, I can look either direction, there's people everywhere looking at you.
Are there, Marshall, are there teachers or anywhere watching these children for this 20, 30 minutes to maybe aren't having breakfast? So
Yes.
they're all supervised.
And I believe at Greenbrier, I think they're in the gym, aren't they? The students who don't eat breakfast are in the gym, and the students who eat breakfast in the cafeteria, I believe. Yeah, they're supervisors. Okay.
Michael Johns?
It's me. Mike Johns, 7401 Dogwood Lane. As Dr. Graham stated, we just got done with a meeting over this busing issue. There was some satisfaction out of the meeting, but I will tell you most of it is non-satisfaction. The majority of the children that are being forced to transfer buses are Catholic student children. Very few have direct bus routes. We have been told that yes, wait 2 weeks, but the letter we were sent is a 59-minute drive to school. That's the letter we were sent. Now we're told, wait 2 weeks, let the program settle. Well, none of the kids in Dogwood Lane will be riding that bus, because I've talked to all the parents. Because there's no way we're waking our children up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get on a bus at 6:35. This is a complete and total debacle the way this program was set up in the beginning. I know that we've had some disagreements over this. As far as I'm concerned, it's prejudicial towards the Catholic school children, because the majority of them are the ones that are being forced to transfer buses. That is unfair and just not right. I do not, and I still don't have a good answer, why it takes 59 minutes on the schedule to get there and 21 minutes to get home. We could have done a better job. This whole entire program has been just total mess. None of the parents knew, not a one parent can answer you what was going, until our meeting today, what would happen at Valley Forge with my 5-year-old daughter. Until this meeting today, I have a very small understanding that the children will be allowed to enter the building when the weather is bad. There are 2 police officers there, and there's 1 supervisor. We don't know how many kids are going to be there for that 1 supervisor. We can't get a number. We don't have the ability to do that for some reason. We also knew that we were going to have 600 more children, or I'll take the percentage, 40% of those were going to be added to the system. But we didn't hire any extra bus drivers. Based on the percentage, we should have at least looked at it. as having a certain percentage of more kids and hire more bus drivers to get the routes down to a reasonable time. Because based on the letter I have, I would have to wake my daughter up at 6:10 to get her breakfast and dressed and get on a bus. So I don't know what this, you know, I hate to put the poo-poo on everybody going, well, this has been such a great day. But as far as I'm concerned, there's still a lot of chaos beyond this program that has not been explained or is actually detrimental to the Catholic children and to the special schools children, from what my understanding is that there are also some of the kids that will be on these transfer programs. Just not right. It's unfair and it's prejudicial. The way this program was set up, and that is the way I'm going to go forward with this. You can give me all the soft answers you want, which is what I got today, was just soft answers. But I would think after, how many years has the Parma school system been in place? We would have some type of statistical answer that would tell us where we should be.
I think the point's well taken, Mr. Johns.
I want to make one more point.
Well, your time's up, but go ahead.
Okay. May I have an extension for 30 seconds?
No, but if you want to make your final point, please go ahead.
Based on this process and based on how bad this is for these children, I do not believe that Dr. Graham belongs in the position he's in. We should have had solid answers today when we showed up at this meeting, not wait 2 weeks.
Point taken.
Thank you,
Mr. Johns. And just for the record, just so everyone's aware, there is a 3-minute rule, and generally at board meetings, we try to limit dialogue between, if Dr. Graham, say, can answer a question or has information, we try to let that go. But we do try to not really have a dialogue at board meetings. We take the information in, and then usually at the next board meeting, Dr. Rashong or someone will stand up and respond to the public, because usually there's a lot of other information involved with delivering to the public to make sure we're accurate in what we deliver. So just keep that in mind, just something, little housekeeping items. I see some new faces in the audience. For those of you that have been here, you know this, but it's not a big deal, just something we want to make sure we call out in the beginning of the year. All right, I move to adopt Resolution 2014-8324 to go into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt Resolution 2014-8324. Any questions from the board? Roll call.
Mr. Nicholas?
Yes.
Mrs. Gullit?
Yes.
Mrs. Dendorfer?
Yes.
Mrs. Halloran?
Yes.
Mrs. Pedro?
Yes.
After executive session, no votes will be taken. So we'll see everyone at the next board meeting.